Hi everyone, my name is Purvi Makwana. I'm a consultant with OpenWave and I've been involved with implementing our IFRS 16 solution a few times now. This session is titled IFRS 16 Data Integration and Export Journal. So in this session we're going to discuss how the IFRS 16 lease data can be posted directly into a BPC consolidation model, or a custom report or export journal can be created for a customer to then export this into their other ERP systems. The method that's used depends entirely on the customer's requirements. So to begin with, I'm going to just show you the properties that are needed to be configured in order to post into a consolidation model, and then we'll look at a couple of examples of some export journals. Okay, so once the leases are created, the lease calculations have been run, and the leases have been converted from lease currency into reporting currency. This data needs to be integrated back in with the rest of the customer's information for reporting purposes, and this can be done in one of two ways, as I mentioned, putting it into a consolidation model or making a report that can then be imported into an existing ERP system. So if the customer is mapped into a consolidation model, there are certain dimension properties that need to be configured. We saw some of these in the previous session, but I'll just go back over them to highlight what needs doing. So to begin with, in the LSE account dimension, we have the target account and target flow properties. So each of these accounts that is going to be mapped needs to have an account and a flow put here, corresponding to the customer's consolidation model. There are also properties in the LSE asset dimension. So here there's target cost, target depreciation charge, target interest charge, and target liability, and each of these accounts is against a different asset type. So again, that depends on how the customer wants to configure the mapping. If the customer does use the LSE entity dimension and LSE interco dimension instead of their own entity and intercompany dimensions, then properties are in both these to map to a target entity or a target intercompany in the consolidation model. Finally, in LSE time, there are some target time properties that are used to map to the customer's system. So here we have the target time ID, the closing target time ID, and the prior target time ID. So all three of these map to the customer system too. Then once all of this is configured, we can use the data manager package in this report IFR 001. So we press this transfer lease data button to trigger a data manager package to transfer the data from the IFRS 16 model into the consolidation model, where we can view this report here in the consolidation model that has all of the data that's been mapped to these accounts here. So we went over the details of how to do this in one of the previous sessions, so I won't go over it again, but this is just an example of a consolidation model report. Next, I'll just show a couple of examples of some output journals that can be created. So here's one example. So again, we have a menu sheet like in all of the other IFRS 16 templates, where the category, entity, lease start time, and currency can be selected. And then when the workbook is refreshed, this report here is produced. This is quite similar to the report in IFR 001, but it's specified according to what the customer wanted. So here we have everything grouped by entity. There's only one lease against this entity at the moment. It's the printer lease we created in a previous session. But yeah, and here are all of the accounts as well. Then this one's quite simple. It's just a BPC report. And then another example of an output journal that was created. Same again, make the selections in the menu sheet and refresh. And then this one's more of a simple system that can be imported into an existing ERP system. So with the other report, the values could be copy and pasted into their ERP system, whereas with this one, it will be directly imported. So here we have all of the leases, lines in this grouped by lease. Again, there's only the one lease in this entity. And then we have this cost center that was input in the lease creation template. It shows the entity, and then these are all of the accounts that they're mapping to in their ERP system. So this is configured by pulling in some values using an index match formula from a hidden template. So I'll show you, a hidden sheet here. I'll show you that in a moment. And then this is just a description that will show up in the ERP system. And this reference value here is the date that the lease starts, followed by IFRS 16, so that when this appears in the ERP system, they know what it's relating to. Okay, so let me unhide that sheet. Okay, so here we have a selection of all of the different flows, accounts, and asset types, and then this column combines all of these to make a large combined ID. And each of these combined IDs is mapped to a specific account, so this combination of flow, account, and asset will go into this account in the ERP system. And also, this customer wanted the option to invert the signage of certain accounts, so if this property Y here is flagged, then for these specific accounts, the signage will be inverted. So there are some hidden columns and rows in this one as well, so I'll just open that up to make it a bit clearer what's going on. So this is a simple BPC report that's been generated here, and some local member properties here pulling in the information that's needed for their export file. So this is taking the flow, the account, and the asset type and making a long ID like we saw in the account mapping sheet. And so this formula here is trying to match this with something in this table and pulling through the corresponding account. So that's how that one's being done. And then you can see these are the values that it's pulling through, and some of them have their signs flipped. Okay, so that's reasonably simple as well. These reports really just depend on what the customer is looking for. So we can aggregate things in different ways. For example, we could list these by cost center instead, or by entity. It's entirely up to what the customer wants to do and which method they choose to use, be that moving into a consolidation model or generating an output journal for export into another system. Depends entirely on what they want.